Checking the price of Bitcoin right now, we're at about $107,000. Joining us right now to discuss the state of crypto security and so much more in an exclusive interview. The CEO of Ledger, Pascal Gauthier, the company providing crypto wallet services and devices. And he's wearing a hat for a reason this morning on the air, just announcing a big new sponsorship deal with the NBA's San Antonio Spurs. Nice to see you, sir. Last time I saw you was at the Olympics. So you're doubling down in sports land.
We're doubling down for sure. I mean, this is our first, actually. And this is the biggest. As a French tech company, or as a French company, I think nobody has ever sponsored a professional team in the US. I think it's very rare for a European company, but we do this because 30% of our business is in the US. You know, this is the most important market for us. This is where we want to push for sort of education, sales, not just on the consumer, but also on the enterprise side. But so it's important for us, and the Spurs is a great team.
I actually want to talk about crypto, but I'm just curious about one thing about sponsorships, because I think we have a lot of CEOs who watch this broadcast who are always thinking about where to spend their money. How did you decide San Antonio, of all places?
Well, first, values. We met with RC, the CEO, and his team, and they pitched us their values, you know, the pound rock values of the Spurs. You know, keep your head down, be humble, work hard. You know, we share exactly the same values. And so as soon as we're aligned on values, then you try to look for other things. You know, again, the US market is very important for us. So we need air coverage here. Like, we need to do more in terms of top of the funnel advertising. And the Spurs have like a great presence in the US, great international presence. There are just so many boxes that the Spurs would tick. And of course, there's a great bridge with France, Tony Parker, way back when, now Victor Wemby. You cannot make a better story. Even the logo, black and white, you know, it matches the jersey.
Okay, I want to talk more broadly about crypto land right now, but given your international perspective, as somebody who lives in Europe, the regulations in the U.S. have always been tough when it comes to crypto. Frankly, I think tougher than some other places. Europe is now its own complicated scenario. But given President Trump now being in office and the Genius Act and other things getting put in place, what is the perspective from outside the country about what we're doing as it relates to crypto?
So look, my view is my view. You know, I think regulation didn't exist in the U.S., and I think it's a feature, not a bug. You know, to change the law in the U.S. is actually very difficult. And when you regulate, you have to think about two things. You have to protect your citizens, and you also have to protect your business. And I think the U.S., in that regard, and this new administration is thinking about the two. When I think Europe has regulated too fast, protecting potentially the citizens, but killing the business. And
this is so interesting, because here in the U.S., you know, if you were talking to the folks at Coinbase or some of the other crypto folks, they really wanted to have regulation here.
You know, I think some regulation clarity, and especially when you're being sued by the SEC, is what you want. And this is what happened with the previous administration. So that's clear. And also, when you're a big business, you know, you root for regulation because this is the hurdle that you put in place so smaller companies and innovation cannot follow. But I'm an advocate for, you know, low regulation and making sure that innovation continues, and making sure that big companies are challenged by, you know, small startups.
In terms of security, and security specifically for crypto, more people are buying ETFs and buying Bitcoin rather than through other devices than actually buying the coins themselves. Does that pose a longer-term challenge to your business?
Look, I don't think so. So first of all, the speculative aspect of crypto is one thing, but it's not everything. You know, typically, not everybody invests in the stock market, and not everybody will invest in crypto. Now, will everybody have digital private property? The answer is yes. Whether you're going to hold a Bitcoin, whether you're going to hold your identity, whether you're going to hold like any kind of token, since everything is becoming tokenized, you will need something we need a wallet, you need a ledger to put that value on and to put that private property on. So I think the future is bright, and everything is being built on top of public blockchain right now. So this era of application built on public blockchain where you need your private keys to interact, you know, think DeFi, this is coming. So no, I think actually the future is for us.
But do you want to have the keys to all of your stuff? And the reason I ask is people are getting kidnapped, by the way, including people who have real crypto, including your co-founder was kidnapped.
Yeah, well, you know, people are getting home-jacked, car-jacked, and you still have a home and you still have a car. So, you know, the fact that you have private property and people are trying to steal it from you doesn't mean that you shouldn't have private property. Now, the question is, how do you protect your home? How do you protect your car? And how do you protect your value? You know, we're here to give you tools that are easy to use, that have backups. You know, we announced Ledger Recovery Key yesterday, and you need to think about your security the same way that you think about your home security. You don't leave your door open, you have an alarm, maybe you have a dog.
Right.
You know, all these kind of things are happening in the real world.
People don't
so
kidnap people of significant means necessarily because they think that these people aren't like walking around with cash on them right? But the reason why people are kidnapping people who they think have Bitcoin, for example, is they think, well, if they can get them to give them the password, they can transfer the stuff, and then it'll be untraceable, right? Isn't that why this is happening?
Well,
we just heard about this crazy story. You followed I mean, I know your co-founder has its own investigation going on in France, and then there was this wild story in New York City where this guy is being, held up in a townhouse or something for 2 weeks, and
that was never going to work.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, so first of all, crime doesn't pay. Second of all, you should not do it in Bitcoin or crypto because, this is traceable forever. This is on a public ledger. And finally, yes, you cover these stories, but I'm sure that at the same time, 25 other people got kidnapped in New York for other reasons, and we didn't cover those reasons. In France, I think it's a crazy number of people that are getting sort of kidnapped every day in their home or in the street, etc., to take money from them. When there is money and when there is fantasy, you're going to have thieves, and it doesn't change the fact that you need to protect yourself. And it's not because the news is pointing at one story that other stories don't exist. Crime is violent right now, and especially in some of our cities, and I think it's a matter of public policy. What's happening in France, we show the tip of the iceberg, but there is a big iceberg under. And I know that the French police and French military are working hard to solve the issue, but it's not just a crypto-related issue. Crypto makes the news because it's the trendy topic right now, but this is not why it's happening.
The hypodermic needles that people at the fair, there's
that was
50.
Yes, I saw that too.
I don't know, hundreds of stabbings then they don't know what was in. People got sick. They don't know what was in the syringes.
Separate question. Can you? And I don't know if you're allowed to speak to it. Can speak to it. Do you plan to go public?
Look, public, private, now it's a choice, and it's a mean, not an end. What we plan to do is to build a great company and launch products, and making sure that our products are ever more secure, easy to use, and that you have a backup, always a backup, so you can access your assets. So we're definitely shooting for mass market. This is why we're doing the Spurs deal, right. And so this is my main preoccupation. At some point, we might go public if that's what we need to do in order to raise money and fulfill our destiny. But this is a mean, not an end.
And last question. There's always been a question about whether security companies ultimately stay independent, or whether bigger companies that actually need the security for their clients in other ways end up buying a company like yours. How do you think about that?
Well, I think that since I'm always trying to build the best possible company, we're always very expensive to buy. So I don't know how to sell a company. I just know how to run it. And so that's a great question, but I'll tell you when I know.